Well, at the opening of the will, I saw my father rip a check for $99 million out of my hand and burn it. My mother's voice cut through the silence like a stab of a knife. That's what you got from letting us down. Flames engulfed the paper. Smoke rose into the air, as if he wanted to extinguish me with himself. Everyone was waiting for me to scream, break down my values, but I didn't. I didn't even bat an eyelid. I just smiled, because what they burned was not real. My name is Chloe Carter, the granddaughter of a billionaire. And that day my parents believed that they had destroyed my future, which they did not know. My grandfather had prepared me for this moment, to face the family that had betrayed me, to survive the fire and to rise from the ashes with more than just money, with the truth. The marble lobby of Harper & Associates shone so brightly that it almost hurt to watch. My heels clicked on the floor as I entered, a sound that I hadn't heard in years. It felt like an armor. Every clack reminded me that I wasn't here to beg. I was here to be a witness. The receptionist barely glanced at me before she pointed at the glass doors. Inside, the conference room was already full. My mother Sarah sat there stiffly, the pearl necklace wrapped around her fingers, her lips pressed together so tightly that I wondered if they would break at any moment. My father Robert leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. A sinister look was on his face, as if he had been waiting for me all morning. And Jacob, my older brother, was slouching with his legs crossed over each other, with the sunglasses on his head, as if it were a normal Sunday brunch. None of them paid any attention to me. Miss Carter told William Harper, the family's lawyer, who was standing at the head of the long mahogany table. His voice was calm and professional, but his gaze carried weight. "Thank you for coming. We are here today to fulfill the last wish of your grandfather, Henry Carter." As always, I took the last place quietly and thoughtfully. The scent of lemon polish and old leather was in the air. My hands rested quietly in my lap, although my pulse was throbbing up to my neck. Mr. Harper cleared his throat and started. He read to Jacob Carter and unfolded a fresh page. Her grandfather leaves the cabin in Jackson Hole and his 1959 Gibbs guitar. Jacob's grin disappeared for a moment. "That's it," he muttered. Mr. Harper did not answer. He calmly continued to Robert and Sarah Carter, his son and daughter-in-law. "He leaves the inherited grandfather clock to his record collection and a donation of 1,000 DREMM names." Silence broke out. My mother gasped for air, struggled for air with disbelief. "Pardon me? That's absurd." My father let out a bitter laugh. "Joke. This must be a joke." I stared at the polished table and let their indignation pass by me like static electricity. Then Mr. Harper's eyes met, and he said to Chloe Carter slowly and deliberately, "He bequeaths his entire fortune of $99 million. Well, already there was silence in the room. I paused for a heartbeat. I swore I could hear the buzz of the blankets lighting up. What was my father driving at me and driving in front of me? "You already understood me," said Mr. Harper, "for sure. This was notarized 3 months ago. The decision was well considered." My mother's face contorted. The veins on her temples stood out. "Basti, she hasn't exchanged a word with us in years. She has let this family down. She can't just come here like a sea-door lady and make a fortune." I raised my chin. "After all," I said, "I didn't come back just like that. I was invited." Jacob snorted contemptuously and leaned back in his chair. "Grandpa just felt sorry for you, Chloe. Poor little Chloe who couldn't keep up." But then Harper pushed a sealed brown envelope across the table to me. The wax seal still bore the coat of arms that my grandfather had engraved by hand. "For you," he said quietly. His last words were clear. She was silent and remained strong. She was never forgotten. I reached out my fingers, grazed the seal at the very moment when my father's hand crossed the table. My father's fingers were clutching the envelope even before I could close it. His grip was icy. The veins stood out, as if the paper itself had betrayed him. "Robert," warned Mr. Harper, in a sharp voice. "It's Chloe's." But my father was already tearing him wild at his movements, like that of a predator eviscerating its prey. The check slipped a sharp rectangle of ink and promise. His face contorted as he held it up and waved it in the air like proof of a crime. $99 million. His voice sounded too loud for the room. This is madness. This girl does not deserve a fragrance. I stopped motionless. My nails dug into my palms in a crescent shape. My mother rushed forward next and tore the folded letter from the hand that had been stuck in it. With trembling hands she unfolded it. Her eyes darted over the words. Her lip curled. For the one who had remained silent and strong, she spat out the words like poison. Then she tore the letter in half. Silence. Strength. She was ungrateful. Always ungrateful. It gives that back, I said in a low voice. But my mother only laughed bitterly and sharply. Oh, how calm and composed she was, as if she was standing over us. She tore up the letter again and again, until there was only confetti on the table. Jacob leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and watched the chaos like a play. You've always loved playing the victim, Chloe. Well, now it's finally paid off. I looked at him fixedly without blinking. Then you probably have to live with the scraps of a guitar while I'm walking away with the future. His grin disappeared. Enough, my father roared and slammed the bill on the table. His hand slipped into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a silver lighter. The click stops like a shot again. I hissed and jumped up. You can't buy yourself back into this family, he yelled, tearing at the steering wheel. The flame hissed greedily. You left us, Chloe. You left us long before your grandfather died. Rubber, don't you dare. A Harper got up, but it was too late. My father held the flame to the edge of the check. The paper chose itself instantly. Black veins ran across the surface as the fire consumed ink and promise alike. My mother's lips curled into a cruel smile as ash trickled into the crystal ashtray. She said that and crossed her arms. Mom, that's what it's like when you betray your family. I did not stir. I said nothing. I just watched as the smoke rose and turned like incense at a funeral. And then I smiled, because what they burned was not what they thought. The flame hissed so sharply that it cut the silence and caught the edge of the check. My gaze rested on the paper that was curled up in my father's hand, the corners folded inward like petals that fall off when burned. Her smoke rose in delicate spirals. It's not nearly $99 million. Halt, called Mr. Harper and reached across the table. But my father jerked his arm back as if out of his mind, the knuckles white, as he held the burning paper higher. This money doesn't belong to her, he roared. She left this family and now she thinks she can just come back and take everything with her. Not as long as I live, Robert. But my mother did not cry in protest. She smiled. Her voice trembled with satisfaction. Burn everything. Let them see what happens when you spit on your bloodline. Ash rained into the glass bowl. Black flakes fell like dead snow. The smell was pungent, bitterly suffocating. I stood there as if rooted to the spot. Every fiber of my body was screaming to push forward to save the check and prove that I was one of them. But I didn't move because I knew better. My hands clutched at my sides. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but my face remained calm, almost calm. You think fire extinguishes the truth, I whispered. My father slammed the charred remains on the shell with heavy breath. Now we are quit. His voice was hoarse, raucous anger which could not discharge. My mother leaned back and crossed her arms. You're never going to win against us, Chloe. Money cannot undo the past. You abandoned us when your father was sick. You let us down when we needed you the most. Jacob laughed darkly. She doesn't even fight back. Look at her standing there like a statue. Kasum. Did Grandpa teach you that too, Chloe? To feebly stand up until you get your money? I finally raised my eyes to him. No, I said quietly. He taught me that silence can hurt more deeply than screaming. It became quiet again in the room, a silence that felt alive, heavy with words that no one dared to utter. Inside, my chest was burning hotter than the flame that had just consumed the check. Our age betrayal. But there was something else underneath. Triumphs. Because what they had turned to ashes was not real. What they had destroyed was a bait, an empty envelope that my grandfather had left me so that I could put it in. He knew exactly what they would do. He knew they wanted to destroy something. He knew that they could not resist the fire, and now they thought they had won. I made her believe it. I made her grin and mock prettily. I made them mistake my silence for a defeat. But behind my calm smile, the real legacy was already hidden. And soon they would realize that the fire they had lit was just the beginning. The smoke was still hanging in the air when Mr. Harper cleared his throat. His gaze flitted to me, calm and yet searching, as if he already knew what my parents did not know. I barely nodded noticeably. He said nothing, but his silence was like a shield. My parents thought they had finished everything and reduced my inheritance to ashes, but I felt the weight of another envelope in my coat pocket. The one my grandfather had put in my hand 2 months before he died. His grip had been weak, his voice low, but his eyes were still burning with the fire of a man who had created an empire out of nothing. "They will try to destroy what they cannot control," he had whispered, bending over to him. "So I'm going to give them something to burn. Let her win her victory. What matters will be safe then." I laughed nervously at the time and thought it was pure paranoia. But when I saw the last embers of cold ashes extinguished, I finally understood. The letter he had given me had been sealed in wax, his family coat of arms engraved deep into the surface. I had opened it the night before the opening of the will. My heart raced, as if I was entering already forbidden territory. Chloe began the letter in his usual loop-like handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And the family I once trusted is circling around me like wolves. The sheet you will receive is not the actual gift. He's a decoy. They will burn him and think they have destroyed you. But the truth has already slipped away from them." I could still recognize his handwriting, shaky but conscious. "The true legacy is secured in a trust fund created in your name, protected by those I trust outside of this family. If the fire is blazing, do not panic. Smile. This will be your victory." So I had smiled, not out of courage, not out of spite, but because the moment my parents lit the paper, I knew that they had played right into his hands. I pressed my hand against my coat pocket and felt the crackling of the second envelope getting thicker and heavier. Inside, there was a key with the engraving. Trilum. My grandfather had given it to me without further explanation. "Moreover, one day you will need this word more than heir." Now it pulsed in my memory, like a heartbeat. Jacob leaned forward and grinned into the ashes. "Well, Chloe, have you swallowed your tongue, or are you just realizing that you're not as special as you thought you were?" I turned to him, my smile unchanged. "No, Jacob, I just realized that you are just as predictable as Grandpa always said." Confusion crossed his face, but I said nothing more. Let him stew quietly, because very soon, the truth would burn brighter than any flame they could kindle. The next morning, the marble clerk of the law firm gave way to the hushed silence of the Langford Private Bank. From the outside, the building looked inconspicuously red brick iron gates ivy that towered up the walls. But inside it resembled a fortress. The sound was muffled by the thick carpet, and the air smelled slightly of cedar and ink. Miss Cater told the receptionist after she scanned my ID. Her tone softened as she read the file. "They're here for box 12. Mr. Adams is expecting you." Mr. Adams, the old confidant of my grandfather. He was waiting at the elevator. His silver hair was neatly combed, his posture as upright as decades ago. "Chloe," he greeted me with a short nod, his voice calm. Henry had prepared this long before his death. "Follow me." We drove down in silence. The elevator felt as if it was carrying the burden of secrets. My palms got wet, not from fear, but from anticipation. Grandfather had trusted this man. That alone had seen me through. The vault opened with a mechanical hiss. The cold air brushed my face. The room stretched out in front of me, lined with metal drawers, each provided with a unique number. Mr. Adams led me to one. "Drawer 12, he said, and put a small brass key in my hand. The word "Atrillum" was faintly engraved on the side. I swallowed hard. He had said that word to me months ago. Mr. Adams just nodded. "Marmis." Then he trusted that you would be ready. The lock could be turned smoothly. The drawer slid out with a heavy metallic sound. Inside there was a fireproof envelope sealed with red wax, a small black velvet bag, and a thick file tied together with a purple-red ribbon. My hands were shaking when I first reached for the envelope. The wax bore the same carved coat of arms of the proud and wild cat stallion. I carefully opened the seal and unfolded a crumpled sheet of paper. Chloe stood on it. If you are standing in this vault, it means that they burned the wrong gift, as I had feared. The check in this envelope is the real $199 million signed and secured. But money is not the legacy. Take a closer look. I pulled out the check. His weight surprised me. He was fatter than usual, sir. The ink was strong, and unmistakably the curved handwriting of my grandfather. My breath caught in my throat. I forced my hands to rest. Then I opened the velvet bag. A USB stick slid smoothly and coldly into the palm of my hand. I did not hesitate. Mr. Adams led me to a small private cabin where a laptop was already ready. My fingers trembled when I connected the stick. The screen flickered, and there he was. Grandpa was sitting in his old study. Behind him, shelves full of leather-bound books. The dusty lamp, under which I had always hidden as a child, shone dimly at the edge. "When you see this, Chloe," his voice filled the room gently but steadfastly, "then I'm gone. And if I'm right, they've already shown you what they're capable of. But I trust you with you. This legacy is not about wealth. It's about power, control, and survival. And now it's in your hands." I put my hand on my mouth. My chest was constricted by something that was neither grief nor relief, but a storm of both. For the first time since the fire, I felt the truth take root in me. My grandfather had not only left me money, he had also left me a gun. 2 nights after the safe, I found Jacob waiting in front of my apartment building. His black BMW was idling at the curb. The headlights cut through the foggy twilight. He leaned against the hood with his arms folded, the posture relaxed, but his jaw clenched when he saw me. He called Chloe in a gentle but tense voice. "We need to talk." I almost walked past him, but something in his tone, half feeble, half pleading, kept me inside. I repeated the speeches. "About what?" "About the ashes that you are still sweeping from Dad's shoes." He winced for a moment, then grinned. "You've always had that sharp tongue. Grandpa must have loved her. But let's be honest, it can't all be yours. 99 million. You would drown in it. Share it with us, with me." I laughed softly, "And please wake up. So this is not about family. It's about survival for you." Jacob's gaze hardened. "Don't pretend you don't need us. Money does not protect you." "Dad is angry. Mom's talking about challenging the will. You can't fight them alone." Stepped closer, close enough to see the slight trembling of his hand as he ran his fingers through his hair. "Do you really think I'm alone?" I whispered. His grin disappeared. "What does that mean?" "It means Grandpa has seen through you all. He prepared me. He gave me more than just money. He gave me the proof." Chalk turned pale in his face. His effervescence evaporated like water through a sieve. "Proof of what?" he asked. "That you would betray me at the first opportunity," I said calmly. "And here you are, on time as always." Jacob's mask of bridge despair came out. "Chloe is listening. They forced me in there. Dad said that if I don't support him, I'll be kicked out completely." "Look, you know what he's like." I interrupted him with a dark look. "You have chosen a side. Do not pretend that you were powerless. You smiled while they burned it." This time Jacob had no answer ready. His eyes darted around, his mouth opened and closed again. Finally, he muttered, "I just didn't think that he would really give you everything." "And that's why he didn't give it to you," I replied. The silence between us was tensely fragile. Cars rushed by. A dog barked down the street. But all I heard was the echo of Grandpa's voice in my memory. "Seal is the sharpest blade." I turned away and went up the steps to the door. Chloe called Jacob after me. His voice broke. "If you continue to irritate them, they will destroy you. They've done it before. You know they will try again." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob and then looked at him. My smile was as sharp as glass. "Let them try," I said. Then I closed the door behind me and left him in the fog with nothing but his fading pomp. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old dust, a place where the truth either rose like fire or drowned in silence. And I went through the metal detector. My heels hit the marble floor evenly, so that the storm seemed to be hiding inside me. Next to me, Sylvia Orton, my grandfather's lawyer, was striding along, her silver hair combed back like a war flag with quiet confidence. My parents were sitting at a table in the hall. Saran. My father was wearing a dark blue blazer with crumpled sleeves, as if he had not slept. My mother's pearls gleamed defiantly on her neck. Her lips curled into a barely noticeable smile. Jacob was sitting behind them, his eyes darting around nervously, and he tapped his foot impatiently on the bench. They did not look at me, but I felt their hatred, like a red-hot heat radiating through the aisle. Judge Kinley entered the hall, the hammer struck once. "We are here today because of the estate of Henry Carter. Disputed wills were submitted." Let's continue. The lawyer of my parents, young and arrogant, rose first. "Your Honor, the most recent valid will clearly bequeaths all the essential assets to my clients. Any claim to the contrary is fake and unfounded." I felt the corner of Sylvia's mouth twitch, a predator that was ready to attack. Slowly she stood on each movement deliberately. "Your Honor, we present as evidence a revised will, which was drawn up under the supervision of a lawyer, notarized and signed by Henry Carter himself 5 months after the document submitted by you." A murmur went through the courtroom. My father hit the table with his fist. He shouted lies. Order barked at Judge Kinley. But Sylvia was not finished yet. She tapped on a tablet and the screen in the courtroom came to life. My grandfather's face looked older and haggard, as if he were lying in a hospice bed, but his voice was clear and calm. "When you see that," he said, looking straight at the camera, "that is, they are doing exactly what I feared. They pressured me to sign a will that I didn't want. I have corrected it. My real heiress is my granddaughter, Chloe Carter. There is no compulsion, no doubt about it. That was my decision." The silence that followed was absolutely only interrupted by the stifled outcry of my mother. Jacob buried his face in his hands. Sylvia's voice broke the tense silence. "In addition, Your Honor, we have correspondence between the defendants and Henry Carter, in which he is pressured to comply with the script, otherwise threatening consequences. We also present the testimony of Mr. Mr. Adams of Langford Bank, who secured the trust property according to the private instructions of Mr. Carter." When the judge leaned back and looked at my parents with narrowed eyes, "I've seen gear. I have seen cruelty. Rarely have I seen both so blatantly put on display. Miss Carter is confirmed as the sole heiress. The estate will be transferred accordingly." My father jumped up. "That's not over yet," he called. "Sit down." Robert drove the judge at him. "I am also ordering an asset freeze until the investigation into the coercion of the elderly and forgery of documents is completed." The hammer blow struck again, this time definitively and thunderously. "The trial is suspended." I stood there, my back straight, while my parents looked at me with piercing glances. But for once, I didn't feel small under her gaze. For once, I was untouchable. The steps of the courthouse stretched out in front of me like the path to a new life. Reporters crowded at the entrance, microphones flashed in the sun. Their voices rose to a frantic chorus. "Chloe, would you like to make a statement?" "Chloe, what do you think about your parents' accusation?" I paused. The hammer blow still in my ears again does not keep the ink on the verdict dry yet. My reflection in the glass doors had not changed when I came in. But now I was carrying something else inside me. Power. Peace. I approached the microphones. My voice was calm, yes, firm. They had already said everything when they set fire to the only love that had ever seen me. I had nothing more to add. The reporter called for more questions. Yes, I left. My heels hit the stone sharply. Behind me, my parents stumbled out of the courthouse. My father barked into his phone desperately, already defeated. My mother's pearls were hanging askew. Her face was pale with fright. Jacob followed them in silence, his eyes fixed on the ground. This time, none of them seemed victorious. They looked small. I reached the sidewalk and took a deep breath. The city was buzzing as usual. Cars lifted, strangers rushed by. But it felt different, as if the world itself had changed. In my pocket were the real envelopes with the legal documents, the trust fund documents, and the last video of my grandfather stored on the USB stick. But the most valuable thing was neither the money nor the papers. It was his words. "Silence is the sharpest blade." This silence had carried me through the fire. It had outlived her anger and now led me here to freedom. That night I was sitting in my apartment, the city lights flickering against the window. I wrapped the old scarf that my grandfather had given me when I was 10. He still smelled slightly of cedar. I put the real check and the USB stick in the safe at the back of my wardrobe, locked it, and then sat down at my desk with a cup of tea, which had finally gotten cold. For years I had felt wiped out, pushed aside, silenced, forgotten. Tonight, the silence was mine. It was no longer empty. She was deserved. I was no longer just the girl they had been trying to break up. I was the woman who had risen from the ashes that they themselves had ignited. And when night fell, I allowed myself one last smile. They thought they had destroyed me, but all they had done was to prove my grandfather right. The fire had not destroyed me. It had revealed to me